It's your first time hearing that music, isn't it, Eric? Isn't it great?
Outstanding.
You gotta love it. You gotta love it. It's one of the things I look forward to. But I've been really looking forward to this conversation. As we let people trickle in, let us know where you're tuning in from. Just hit a comment in the messages here. Let us know what city you're in, what country you're in. We always have a cool global audience, and it's fun to see. And without further ado, I'm incredibly pumped to have this conversation. Eric, you and I go way back. Same thing with Satish, obviously. But it's a complete pleasure to have you on. I can't believe this is your first time on the Data T podcast. Oh, there you go. You're starting to see people from Boston, Orlando, Portland, Maine, Netherlands. Yeah, I would love if you could quickly just do an introduction on yourself and your role. And then there's going to be a lot more questions I have about your founding story and everything there. But if you could just do an introduction for yourself, and then we'll get rolling.
You bet. It's fun to be on here with you guys. Yes, correct. We've had a friendship and a working partnership between the companies for a long time that's been just outstanding, genuine, and successful. And so maybe this is the uncut or the cable version of the podcast that needed clearance to happen, but really enjoy it. So I'm glad to be here. Erik Duffield, one of the co-founders, CEO of Hakkoda, now Hakkoda and IBM Company. I've been in the data space for about 30 years. So I've seen three major generations of technology evolve with different companies over that time. And it's been a lot of fun. And that journey, really unexpectedly, I did not know that in my career, another generation of technology that would really start to shift things would come up and create the opportunity for Hakkoda. But I'm glad it did, because it's been an amazing time to do this with partners like you and Snowflake and the modern data stack. And just a lot of fun to work with clients on everything they've got going on right now.
Awesome. I'm excited I got a lot of questions for you. If you don't know who I am, I'm Armon Petrossian, CEO, co-founder of Coalesce. I got my co-founder here, Satish. I'll let you introduce yourself real quickly and we'll get rolling.
Hey guys, this is Satish Jayanthi, CTO co-founder, Coalesce. Super excited to have you here, Eric.
Great to be here, Satish.
I've got to say, this relationship between Coalesce and Hakkoda goes back to pretty much almost immediately after we came out of stealth. Hakkoda had just launched into the Snowflake ecosystem. We had launched exclusively into the Snowflake ecosystem as a transformation partner. And I remember it like it was yesterday, meeting up with your other co-founders as well as Imran for dinner at reInvent. And we were talking through the vision of each other's companies, the potential, where our focus was. And I can't say I've ever felt more aligned with a partner. And that probably is why you all have been our reigning champ partner of the year the past couple of years when it comes to implementations, not just with Snowflake, but also Coalesce. So couldn't be happier to have you on, Eric. First thing for the audience, you've got a great background and founding story with Hakkoda. Could you share it for everybody how you even got into this? I know you mentioned you've been in data in a long time, but what was the trigger point for you to go and launch into the Snowflake ecosystem and do what you did at Hakkoda? Like, how did that all come to inception?
Yeah, a little quick history that'll inform kind of my decision-making at the time. So early on, I was part of a data consultancy that focused on that first generation of technology. Really pre the emergence of cloud, it goes back. So we were doing standard data warehousing and analytics for companies as those systems were really starting to get a hold inside large organizations. And then that company grew and eventually sold right at the beginning of the Hadoop timeframe and distributed file systems. And I moved on to an organization called Aperio that was enterprise SaaS. And it was really at that emergence of organizations adopting the cloud when most people were concerned about security. This isn't real, it's a fad. And we went through that entire cycle with amazing organizations like Salesforce and Google and Workday, and saw enterprises adopt the cloud. We sold that company sold in 2016, and I went on to Deloitte on the software side of Deloitte to create a solution using real-time interaction management and customer data. And I had there were 3 acquisitions, some really sharp CTOs that we together realized there's got to be a new way to do this. By the time they were acquired, been built on data platforms of different vintages, and we thought this can't look today like it did before. And along that, we found Snowflake, and this was early on. So this is early on in our cycle with Snowflake. Snowflake had been around for years. So this is 2019, early 2019. We wanted to move to that platform and did. And I saw the vision that Snowflake had, not only for the technology, there's lots of great technology comes and goes, but when you see that combined with a market opportunity, a vision to expand their addressable market with new things like transactions and applications, and you see an organization that's really mature and built for growth, and what Frank at the time was building with the team was pretty amazing. So all of that and all of my history convinced me, hey, there is a company to be built around this ecosystem. And so that's what we did. And it wouldn't have happened had I not gone to people I'd worked with between 10 and 20 years in this space across different companies, much like you guys, that had the trust, the playbook, that we could work shorthand and work very quickly to do something differentiated. And that's what we did. And I brought on my co-founders, Ryan, Bob, Patrick, Kim, all that you know. And then we expanded that team to really, the heart of our team is that group that came after that, the leadership team of Hakkoda. And what I love about that story is, there's we're engineering-based company. And I really felt that this market needs engineers that really think about things and basically innovate their way out of repeatable patterns. And engineers bring lots of technology to us and say, hey, this is interesting. Maybe I'll start using this. But there's a difference between great technology and when organizations are aligned in their vision about what the market needs and how do we work with customers and what we're going to bring to customers. And that's really when Patrick, one of the co-founders, started seeing and investigating and working with you guys. When he came back, it's like, there's something different. Yes, there's great tech. That's a minimum required, but there's organizational alignment around how we see what customers need. And that really aligned to our philosophy around Snowflake, which was predominantly making complex things simple. Lots of people can admire complexity and have lots of complexity, lots of knobs to turn, but making it simple is an art form. And that's really what we thought the customers needed. We built our organization around that. You guys were very aligned to that. And it created this great go-to-market relationship where we could serve customers with a similar philosophy.
I love it. I would say all the credit as far as our product philosophy goes should go to Satish. But one of our core values, one of our 6, is to keep it simple. And we've always been really passionate about taking complexities away, but still providing extensibility. I saw a ton of similarities to the way Hakkoda approached the market and really taking what usually is such a painful, difficult, risky, time-consuming implementation when it comes to data engineering use cases and simplifying it for your customers. And so obviously, great mission accomplished. Hakkoda was acquired by IBM. Now you've got a way bigger vantage point to so many other organizations. And I don't want to lose sight of the topic of this podcast. It's all around the AI-ready data team. And AI's a topic of conversation in literally everything these days. Given you've got so many organizations that are working with you, you've got so much visibility into what companies are trying to accomplish when it comes to being AI ready. How would you even begin to describe what an AI ready successful data program looks like?
I think it starts with people recognizing what the shift to AI is, because some of it existed prior in the machine learning phase, but really it's a shift from processes that are making data consumable by humans to making data, or the majority of data, consumable by machines. And that's a vastly different process. And one of the things I mentioned about, replatforming a product when I was with my prior firm to even work we're doing replatforming products now on Snowflake is that ratio of how much of this data is going to be consumed by humans versus the machine. And it's not just lifting and shifting to new technology. The entire design pattern is different in order to do that successfully. So I think that's the biggest thing to be AI ready, is to understand we've got to think about prepping data, serving data, governing data that a machine will consume and that a human will participate in. And so now, if you said 2 years ago, 80% of data was consumed by humans, large data warehouses, semantic models, massive BI sprawl. That's because we're trying to feed humans in all these different ways. And now it's starting to shift, and there's still a long way to go. But the technology's there that we can feed machines to be an integral part of that decision making. So I think AI ready means you've got to understand fundamentally that. How's my architecture going to change? How's my organization going to change? When humans and machines have this orchestrated experience where it's a combination of using data together. So part of that is clients that are successful, companies that are successful, start to do some research to understand what are humans really good at around context and using analogs. What are machines really good at? Calculations, consistency, right? And so you have to kind of think about it in that regard. And then understanding that, you understand what your outcomes are, your goals or your endpoints are. Then you start to build the processes for the machines. So it's the data governance, it's your pipelines, it's your auto healing, your monitoring, all these things that the systems are now really good at that are very different, architecturally design pattern, miles away than what you would have done 5 years ago had you started to build a data system. And so that's really where organizations start to determine their long-term success or failure about being AI ready. Yes, the shortcut is we've got to have all our data ready and accessible for machines, but there's a larger kind of thought process around it that I've noticed in organizations that are truly successful. They're really thinking about that, those elements of it. How's our team going to work? How are our consumers going to use the data? What decisions are we going to turn over to machines? What decisions are humans going to be involved in?
That makes sense. I agree with you. I'm curious, you mentioned we've still got a long way to go to close that gap. What gaps do you see between hype and what data teams actually deal with in reality right now, if anything comes to mind immediately as they go through this journey? And do they have too high of expectations when they get started? Like, do customers have this kind of North Star that's realistic? Like, talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think if you look at kind of an AI adoption curve or an educational curve, pick yours out there, but go to your favorite AI tool. I'm a huge Perplexity user, and look at that curve, and you'll see there probably is expectations early on for the past year and a half, 2 years have been a little high. Not in the long term, but in the short term of what's going to be accomplished, how transformation is going to be in the short term, because they underestimate how hard it's going to be and the shifts beyond just the technology. So once again, we're in a technology adoption pattern where the capabilities of the technology outpace the readiness of the organization to adopt them and all the things it means beyond lines of code. And so that creates this expectation internally in organizations and with customers that this is going to be super fast, super easy. And it takes some practice to get there. So organizations will get there, but it means sometimes reskilling, shifting talent around, bringing in new talent, new ways of working, new ways of running projects, new skills in-house that are needed to kind of execute these programs. So I would agree. It's been a situation where expectations have been really high. We've gone through the period where we've experimented a lot, finding out what works, what doesn't, what's harder, what's easier, not just in technology, but for us as organizations. And I think we're probably pretty close to moving past that, to really starting to see major impacts. And I know everyone's enamored by the MIT study recently that says 95% of programs fail. That's not our experience. And so I could see it when you broaden the set to everything that's been an experiment, because people are trying things with no intention of bringing it to production and to be successful. Right. They're learning, they're experimenting to learn, how is this going to work? What are the boundaries of AI? Where can we use it? Where can we not? And that's all a natural part of the life cycle. And as we work through that to this production life of AI, where it's making real decisions in real time, I think we're getting ready for a very exciting phase, that new skills are being developed, new patterns being deployed, new technologies adopted, that more of those promises will come now in the next phase. They're going to feel a little late because everyone wanted them right away. But there's material advantages created by being an agile organization that can deploy these capabilities over and over again.
Yeah, it's kind of reminiscent of how the data market evolved in itself, right? Like, it wasn't until cloud data warehousing made it very accessible for all types of companies, and the supporting platforms and tooling to allow data projects to be successful. You could argue similar level of sentiment to how AI is evolving, where the tech was a little bit ahead of the skills and labor and the way companies were ready to operate. And so we're now seeing that same maturity curve over the course of, what will be the next year or two. And you being on the forefront of that makes complete sense. You have visibility into that. And so I'm confident people will scale up, teams will evolve, but it does take time. And that's something that hopefully moves as fast as possible. Yeah. So let's say that's the case. As you're talking to data leaders in the industry, customers, and AI is rapidly evolving, what do you think that they lose sleep over today? If it's not the potential functionality of tech, like where's the pressure coming from deploying AI projects successfully since the tech's there?
Yeah, I think it's still number one if you're really talking about losing sleep, data security, right? So think about the speed at which data is moving in a machine or AI generated. If your pipeline and your entire process flow, your data ops is AI automated, it's moving very fast. And so data security is always the big one. That's the job killer, the company killer that everyone has to get comfortable with early on. I'd say the next thing that's probably more surprising is the composition of their teams. So teams have been built and hired and developed and nurtured over last generation technology. And organizations, when they get you into the quiet, senior executives, when they get you into the quiet room by themselves, that's the question they want to know is, do I have the right team to execute this? If not, how do we shape it? How do I use part of your team? How do I reskill my existing team? What skills do I need to add? That's always one of the early conversations because it's key. The senior leaders know it's key to project success. And that's really the marker that everyone has to put on the board, the points on the board later. At a macro level, for us as humans, as governments, as organizations, I think the labor force shift is the biggest concern with what's going on. How is labor going to shift? And I would say, when I think through that and have some really fun conversations on it, the part that always gets to that's kind of meaty that we could address is, if AI starts to replace the junior ranks early on, how do we develop and create the senior ranks? Whether it's a software engineer that no longer, right, is not growing through testing in a QA role into an engineer role, into a senior engineer role, or it's an attorney that starts as an intern, then an associate, then a junior partner. And right, so it's those are the things that we're quickly automating and scaling, even if it's AI, human in the loop, 10xing it. There's one human and 9 used to be humans. That's at a macro level what I think people are thinking through. But at an organizational level, is it secure? Is it governed? And can my team really build do they know the modern patterns and how to launch it? And so we're not just taking what we know and applying it to AI.
Yeah, that makes sense. It is interesting. The entry-level positions are what AI is targeting, whether that's in IT or sales or you name it. And so how do you ever get to a senior position if you never had a chance to be in the entry-level position? I'm always optimistic. Otherwise, I wouldn't have started a company. But I'm sure this will get figured out. I don't know exactly how or what it's going to look like. But that is something that's been on my mind as well. Satish, I know I've been asking all the questions. I'm sure you got some. Otherwise, I've got plenty. But anything you're curious about for Erik?
Yeah. I know you talked about there's a lot of new and kind of new ways of using the AI technology. You're seeing some success there. Any special kind of use cases where people, having success versus some use cases where they're, they thought it would work, but it just didn't? Like, for example, we hear a lot about like AI agents, where things are being done in an autonomous fashion, right? You rely on the AI agent to do certain actions. Are you seeing any of those types of use cases in production? Or we say we are still in the experimental phase for that?
No, in production, definitely. I think The agentic use case, the success or failure is not whether it's agentic or not. It is what it's being applied to and how ready is that. So the core technology to create agents or systems of agents that process workflows and perform work, it's happening now. There's a rapid conversion to this right now. You'll see it mainly on the cost takeout side. That's the early phase because it's controllable. Then it'll move to the innovation side, the revenue generation side. But the ability to create the technology to create agents successfully, to monitor agents, to adjust them, to retrain them is all there. And companies are using it, and there are successful case studies, and there are ones that aren't. Part of it is did the company or the organization deploying it have the right goal in mind? Did they have the right context in mind? Do they have the data prepared? Is the data cleaned and governed and ready for it? But agents among themselves is just a new paradigm for processing and scheduling and pushing some of the decision making into the system. We're seeing it be very successful. It's not a determinant for success. What you choose to have the agent do more is, and we're seeing cool experiments in it that don't work out, but you learn a lot and you point it at something else. And that's really that early phase of boundary testing. Where can I apply this or not? I think it's very meaningful. I don't think it's a loss for organizations to experiment and not move something to production if they learn from it. But there has to be that organizational realization that is when you're experimenting, you're learning from your failures as you are from your successes, and taking that and informing what you do next. And I think there's a lot of that happening despite the recent headlines of where people are thinking it's less successful. There's no backing down from it. Everyone's learning a lot, and they're reapplying the technologies now with some skills into areas that it's very suited for.
Yeah. It's one of the coolest things has been seeing how our customers leverage AI from their actual data implementation. So there's a couple I have that come to mind, but even simple examples of making support phone calls easier for customers at an insurance company. Tons of AI use cases there to accelerate and improve wait times, response times, everything. So
yeah, call deflection
Yeah.
for large organizations saves them tens, hundreds of millions a year. And it's a better customer experience, quite honestly. Like when you have to make that phone call, something fell down and you weren't able to self-serve or serve within an interface. And so I think there's great steps being made in those examples, Armon. Absolutely.
Yeah, cool. So we talked about some of the concerns there around roles for entry-level positions, potentially, but how do you see the roles of data professionals changing over time? Do you have a strong stance on that? Strong opinion on how you see the roles shifting?
It's a great outlook for data professionals, as long as you're prepared to go with the flow. And so what I would point out on this interesting kind of early career path, and what do we do with early career, is let's take engineers that Satish works a lot with day to day.
Yeah.
They are adopting AI faster than anyone else. And so, right, the senior engineers, they've got a lot on their plate. They're managerial, they're architectural, like they're not getting the opportunity to be as hands-on in the deployment and working with it. And so those fresh engineers coming out of school have great technical skills. They're applying it on their own very, very fast as a digital native, using that technology. So my expectation is they will grow with it. I think your entry-level attorneys will be using AI as their left and right hand. It will be very natural to them. And so the maturity of each industry and its adoption of AI depends on having that digital native, that AI native worker deploying it and running it with them and matriculating through the ranks. So I'm very optimistic around that. But we have to find our way there and recognize that there are some big labor shifts coming. I think for data engineers, this is just going to make data more important. Data is moving faster. It's more impactful. It's getting more decisions allocated to it. And so the people that shepherd it, that design it, that architect it, that test it, that validate it, it's great careers for them. And so early on, when AI first started popping out in this generative AI space, a great diagram came out of just describing it as like the 5th generation language abstraction. And I really think that that paradigm resonated with me. Like, we've been abstracting complexity away from software engineering forever. This is just another way of doing it that makes it more accessible to more people, but there's still masters of it. And so I think it's a great opportunity to be in the data space. And if you're a software engineer with data experience, you're in a great market.
Yeah. It's like, I would imagine of all the roles that could be negatively impacted, a data engineer is the lowest on that list. Like, it's such a, it's such a important skill right now. And sure, they may be able to automate or accelerate a lot of their work, but they're still going to need to always be a highly specialized data practitioner at companies to help make sure that it's delivered with high quality, trusted, the logic's refined, it's working properly. I just think that would be the hardest thing to replace as this continues. So yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, exactly. What new skills or mindset do you think data leaders should prioritize then in that case?
I think, well, one, I think data governance is interesting to think about and talk about, especially in the context of being AI ready, because for a large part of my career, data governance was a control mechanism. And now it's really an enablement mechanism. It was locked down. You can't access this data. This data's got to die at a certain time. Like, it was all about control, and control and access were at odds. And now control and access are aligned. You can give more access and have more control. So you got to think about that and plan for that. Now what are you going to do with that? And you do in an AI age where data is moving through a machine and it's not going from human that manages the pipeline. What happened? Okay, I need to reload this data. That is going away if you design your patterns well. To the BI analyst who's updating the semantic model, to the BI analyst who's writing reports, to the frontline managers who are consuming reports or pivoting data around. A lot of that work's going to flow through machine, and then it's going to grind data a lot further for the human to interact with it and make decisions around analogs and around context that humans are great at. And so I think organizations need to think about, and people need to think about, governance as an enabler, and what does an enabling data governance process look like along our entire data value chain?
Yeah, governance has had a bad rap for a very long time. Like, I think data teams they've been resistant to data governance teams, like data engineering teams. It's like the last thing they want to do is put in more bureaucracy and red tape, whereas that's been historically data governance's teams' roles, is to try to slow things down and put in, figurative laws into how the data team is supposed to work. Whereas, now obviously we went through the acquisition of a data cataloging company and are seeing how data governance teams want to move now is so different. Like, they want it to be an enabler, not something prohibitive. And I expect that trend to continue as organizations have to figure out how to do things with data in a way that's governed, but without slowing down the operations. And it's been we call it governance shifting left. And I think that's a trend we're going to see continue to grow a lot more quickly just as a result of AI initiatives.
Shifting left's a great way to visualize it, because even if you think of data layers, bronze, silver, gold, gold was always that walled garden, protected garden that, no, it can't get to gold layer unless very IT governed, restricted, big, hard to get in, which means the CIO's organization generally has very protected, trusted data, and marketing goes off and does their own and creates their own because they've got to move fast, right? And so now you think about machines. Are your algorithms only going to access gold data that's incredibly curated along that process? Likely not. So now you got to think of governance in this world. Well, gold was our curation process on the human consumption path. Now we've got to think about layers. And there was a really good question in the Q&A that someone posted around, do we need this middle layer? Are we sourcing data right from source systems? So this is that exact thought process of, in the AI world, yes, just like in the machine learning world, for those organizations pre-AI that were pre-Gen AI that were spending a lot of time on machine learning, you're accessing data from lots of places, not the final curated data source. And so shifting left on governance and really enabling data to be accessible by humans and machines very quickly, very trusted, that's a great role to be in. And one, talking about great career paths, truly being on data governance is a very strategic role inside organizations that I think is also a cool path.
It is, yeah. Satish, when it comes to trusted data, people use this term all the time. Anything that like how do you even define trusted data? Because Erik's talking a lot about like executives and making decisions, data being trusted or governed properly. Like how would you define that looks in an organization? Curious.
Yeah, I think there's two steps to get to the trust. One thing in my experience, it has always been the consistency. So first of all, you got to make the data consistent, whether it's right or wrong. It has to be the same reported across the company. And then you start talking about whether that's right or wrong. So there's a two-step process, in my opinion, because if it is inconsistent, it just gets very, very hard even to like, where do we start? To get that consistency is the first step, but then obviously the definitions, the data governance comes into play. Hey, here's what we mean by these things. And the second part of that is, where are we getting this information from? Like what sources, what data elements, what calculations, who owns this? There's a lot of things that come into play. But that's what my experience has been. Trust is built over time, first with consistency and then with proper definitions and proper transparency.
That's definitely a way to measure success, I would say, right? Like there's so many ways that trust can be eroded if you do have inconsistencies. How would you measure the success of an AI-ready data program, Erik, when you go to customers? Like, is there a general rule of thumb around what it looks like when it comes to speed, trust, business adoption, cost efficiency? Like, how would you define an AI-ready data program being successful at the end of the day?
Maybe it goes beyond AI ready, but ultimately, I think the measurement for the overall data program is the marginal time cost to the next interaction, to the next AI thing that you launch, right? Because at a program level, it's not just the one thing. If you're on an AI journey, you're creating multiple agents, multiple interactions. Your pricing's being handled by agents and AI. Your shipments are being handled by AI, right? So it's endless. And so if you grade yourself, am I AI ready? Do I have a modern data system? How fast can I create one and move to the next one, to move to the next one, to move to the next one, right? And so each one of those along the way, the aggregate of those need to be successful in reducing cost or driving new revenue. But from a platform basis, from a team basis, that marginal time cost to deploy the next thing, I think is super important, because if that's really low, you're adopting new design patterns. You've done in data with your data ops what software did with software DevOps over the years.
Right.
You've integrated the systems, you've automated it, you're monitoring it, you're adjusting it, self-healing, all of these things. And I think that should be the goal. If everything is put into just producing one thing, your first AI product or service, you won't recognize the importance of the system that you're building and building the next one. And that's the most valuable thing as an organization. If you're really good at deploying it, and you can deploy 10 in the time it takes someone to deploy one, how many do you need to be successful to just crush your competition? You could have 3, 5, 6.
Yeah. It comes back to what you were saying earlier too, like 95% of AI projects failing. It's like, so what? If the intention wasn't to succeed on the initial one, and you can change rapidly and have 10 experiments in a shorter period of time, and one of them is a huge hit, then that's really what you need to be looking for. It's around how quickly you can iterate, how quickly you can adapt and find success, even if there are certain failures along the way. I know internally we did a ton of experiments with AI, and then we found some incredible use cases that it was very relevant for. But you don't just choose the right one right off the bat. And if you did, I would be skeptical, because there's probably a lot more gold to uncover in the path anyways. And so, yeah, I think the adaptability is something that's highly relevant for data teams and any team at the end of
Look
the
at
day.
innovation, lowering the cost of failure, right? So if
That's
you can
right.
if you can do
That's
those
right.
10 experiments faster and cheaper than everyone's doing one, you've lowered your cost of
Right.
failure. You're now an effective experimenting organization. If your experimenting
Yeah.
organization is you take 6 months to get something approved, you go through all procurement, everyone chokes the living life out of the thing because they're paranoid of failure, you're going to drive
Yep.
failure and you're never going to get a new one. And so I think that's the pattern we've seen in other technologies, that in successful organization, and we're early in this phase, that's what really impresses me, is that lower cost of experimentation and failure allows you to drive more successes.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I agree. I think it's something that organizations either have an abundance mindset towards, or a fearful scarcity mindset towards, and it perpetuates itself, doesn't it? Like you see, as you start to find success, it starts to snowball. Whereas
That's
if
right.
you are paranoid and constantly afraid of taking a bet, or you're closed-minded when it comes to being experimental, that's when things dry up. So
That's right.
Yeah.
yeah. So
It's never been easier to do that, though. I mean, I was just going
that's
to
true.
say
That's
I
true.
remember anything that we had to try in the past used to take several months. So that's the fear of experimentation. You don't know the
Right.
result, but the experiment itself takes so long that it's just not scalable. But yeah, absolutely agreed that this is the
Yeah.
right time to take that kind of approach.
I'm assuming this is back in the day when people were drawing logical models before building out the
Oh my
physical data engineering use case, and like a production instance would take 6 months to go live, if not longer. But obviously, as cloud adoption evolved and modern technologies evolved, that became so much faster. So I expect a very similar renaissance when it comes to AI. Speaking of predictions, we got a couple questions left. And by the way, anybody in the audience, if you've got anything you're curious about for Erik, feel free to hit the Q&A. But I also can't believe that it's this time again. So every year we do data predictions for the upcoming year. It feels like the year flew by, because I'm back to being here asking you, Erik, what are your predictions when it comes to significant data trends in 2026, which I guess only 3 months away. Now that we're at the end of September, anything that you're looking forward to, or maybe just trends in general that are top of mind for you as we turn the corner into 2026?
There's a few that are particularly interesting to me. Some will have longer term impacts, but I would not be surprised if you think about how hot and frothy this space has been, if there's a little bit of a shakeout in calendar 26 in the valuations of AI.
Oh yeah,
I mean, it's
for
just
sure.
been so hot. How can it not be? And of course, it's
Wait, you
always
mean there's a bubble?
aren't there always? And bubbles are great. I love bubbles. Bubbles are fantastic. They're exciting. And I bring it up to say, look, if there is a shakeout, that's not a bad sign. I mean, obviously, if you're concentrated in those, it'll hurt for a little bit. But it's a
Yeah,
natural part of the cycle of the market, right? Things bubble up, they get super inflated, they ease off a little bit, but that means we're moving from one phase to the next. And what
right.
we see with our clients is the amount of so take it away from the AI companies and the corporate companies, the amount of efficiencies and productivities gained with AI are real, and they're starting to show up, and we're early on in that. And so while we may go through this public market cycle of AI software companies and foundational model companies, all of that it may ease off a little bit in 26, because at some point the tea kettle's got to blow some steam. The client side, the actual implementation of it, right? We're moving in that next phase of that cycle that I think is super exciting. Budgets will increase, spending will increase, successes will happen. Our clients will have better earnings calls. Their stocks will go up. Like, that's a phase that I think it feels like 26 could show us some of that, which never be afraid to ride through that. If you're going to be a bubble guy, you got to be a post bubble guy. Let's call it that.
For sure. Yeah.
I like so now being part of IBM, I'm very
Yeah.
quantum aware. And I love the boldness that IBM put out around quantum computing and demonstrating next year fault tolerant quantum, with a release of this kind of in that 2029, 2030 timeframe. That's coming fast. So that's, we're 3 years away, and there's going to be proof points demonstrated this year by IBM and maybe others to follow. Thinking of AI and data readiness, quantum AI, I love that the engineers are progressing and pushing forward and inventing things from the ground up, from the silicon up. And so I think 26, with all the capital invested, with all the venture and private equity money and corporate capital, look for broader technology innovation, AI that is in the wake of this AI that feeds and kind of accelerates beyond that. So quantum is something I'd always keep an eye on. We're certainly watching it closely. It's being experimented with some really interesting case studies. We've got a few years before broad adoption comes, but I'm super excited about that. So always exciting. For the next bubble too.
That's what I was about to say. That I'm more excited about that than I am about the bubble to pop. But I find it funny because both Satish and I, we just did a roadshow called Coalesce Join, where we had Joe Reese on a panel, as well as Joe Floyd, who you've met, one of our board members, but a general partner at Emergence, where they're making tons of AI investments right now. And the question came up, is there a bubble? And Joe Floyd, the Emergence investor, was like, there's absolutely a bubble. We just don't know what inning we're in. Are we in the second inning or the ninth? Like, is it about to pop tomorrow, or are we just getting started? Nobody can answer that question, but who knows? Maybe 2026 will be the year it does burst. Let's see.
Well, whenever it happens, it'll rebuild. This is not a fact. It's not going away. People getting your data ready for machines to be part of the consumption path is AI readiness, and that no doubt is only going to accelerate.
For sure. We got time for one last question, Erik. This is always a fun one, and I say that to you specifically because you are a CEO that I've always respected a ton and greatly admired on your ability to paint a vision, follow through on it, and execute. I think Hakkoda has done an exceptional job at doing that compared to not just consultancies that we've worked with, but any business, period. Is there any advice or closing words for anybody tuning in, whether it's data related or even career related?
As I think through this, we're in a world, and I mentioned up front, Hakkoda was built, around engineers and how the impact that engineers will have in the marketplace for the last 4 years and the next 10 years. Now, saying that, if you're an engineer or you're a finance or business person, my advice is it's a great time to focus on strategy, focus on effective leadership, building teams, and then also brand, which you could simplify and think of storytelling, your ability to communicate your message out there. So in a world where engineering is everything, and there are, for the right people, $240 million signing bonuses that are really good AI engineers. That's an incredible opportunity for a resurgence in the discipline around strategy, effective leadership, and building teams. Because that's what's needed to pull it all together. And so whether you're an engineer, a lead engineer, an aspiring leader, or a business leader, a sales leader, those skills are incredibly important to bringing to reality everything that we know is possible over the next decade. And so I always like to say, okay, what are we not paying attention to? And if everything's about the bits and lights and the engineers, then that means there's got to be an incredible opportunity for those who have skill and discipline around strategy and leading people.
Right. Yeah, that makes complete sense. I love it. It's been such a pleasure having you on, Erik. It's always been amazing working with you and your entire team. I'm glad we were able to make this happen. And I can't believe it took us this long, but we're here now. And I just want to say thank you and congrats to all the success and the future success for you and the Hakkoda team.
Thank you, guys. I really have enjoyed the partnership and will continue to do so. You guys are two of the best in the business. Always look forward to getting together.
Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Erik.